So, so glad to be in front of you talking about your amazing career and all the obstacles that you've overcome. And now you're at the point of your life where you want to be able to help as many people as you can.
Yeah.
So you're a massage therapist.
Yes.
You're a yoga instructor. Mm-hmm. And you're an educator.
Yes.
Tell me how this all began.
Well, my story is a long one, and I won't bore you with too many details, but in my childhood there was some abuse that I dealt with causing neck pain, but I also found out in recent years that I actually live with a connective tissue disorder that I didn't even know existed until, fortunately, a student mentioned that she had it, and when I asked her more about it, I'm like, that kind of sounds like me. Started doing research and found out that I actually live with that. But in addition to, so like when I was a kid, I would partially dislocate my shoulders for the fun of it. Should have known that that was unusual. In kindergarten, I was so thankful that I watched Sesame Street and learned that at your kindergarten exam that they're gonna like hit your knee and you're supposed to kick, because when she hit my knee, I didn't kick. She tried like 2-3 times and I was afraid I'd get in trouble. So when she hit it again, I just kicked for her. It's because I actually have no reflexes. I've had doctors try, apparently I have reflexes here and here too. I have none of them. Connective tissue disorder. But so I went on to, at 16, I started driving a car, and I was like a car magnet for several years. In 1 year, I was rear-ended like 5 times. So not only did I have the childhood neck trauma, but then you add all this whiplash, and I was in constant neck pain. So I really empathize with anybody who was in pain, and nobody seemed to understand it, especially at my young age. I mean, here I am, a teenager, and people are like, no way you're in that much pain. But I mean, it was so bad to bring tears to my eyes trying to do dishes, just looking down at the sink, or trying to do homework or read a book.
Oh, boy.
So
before you continue to stay right there, I'm just going to do something.
Yeah, so all of this pain, and thank you.
You're welcome.
And eventually, I just kind of kept moving through life as best I could. I would exercise, try to stay strong, but I didn't really know what to do to make it better other than I would take ibuprofen. And one day my dad said, you should try chiropractic. And I did that, and I noticed, okay, that kind of helped, but it was very temporary. And he said, why don't you try massage? And I thought, well, that sounds like it would probably help even more. And had my first massage, loved it, continued getting massage, and in general, I loved it. They really made me feel good, but at the same time, sometimes they made me feel worse. And it took me a long time to understand that, really until not that long ago, until I really figured out and started understanding connective tissue disorders. But so yeah, I was receiving massage. Eventually, I found myself in my first yoga class, and that was really life-changing. That was something that led me to recognize how important it is that we really pay attention to our bodies. And what I found is a lot of people with this connective tissue disorder and hypermobility in general have also dealt with some childhood trauma and, maybe neglect of their emotions and stuff. And so I think that kind of plays into it. And when I went into this yoga class, I didn't realize how disconnected I was from my body. And in that class, one of the early instructions was, just in the way we sat and how we positioned our head and our rib cage and everything. And all of a sudden I was like, I'm thinking to myself, like, wow, wait, my neck doesn't hurt so much. Like, wait, this is a thing? I could change the way I'm positioned and I'm not in so much pain. And that was really significant. And then in that same class, I went on hands and knees and could barely hold myself up. My arms were trembling so much. And I'm like, damn, am I weak? And then at the end of class, we went into bridge pose, and the teacher started guiding people into wheel, which is a really advanced pose, but I had no idea what she was talking about. I just followed the instructions. And so from flat on my back, knees bent, brought my hands up, put my hands over, and she said, and push. And I did, and I went up into wheel. And I was one of the only people in class who could do that, even though it was an intermediate class. People had been in there for 7 years, and the teacher came over.
You weren't weak.
Yeah, the teacher came over and looked at me and said, and how long have you been practicing yoga? And I said, today.
Today. Oh, no.
So we were all a little shocked by that. And so it just kind of continued to evolve. And I took what I learned in those yoga classes into my everyday life. And I started realizing, wait, if I tuck my chin and I look down with my eyes and not bow my head, my neck doesn't hurt as much with dishes. If I'm in warrior pose, say when I'm vacuuming, my low back won't hurt. So I had neck pain, I had low back pain, all sorts of joints popping in and out. But so I started applying these things. And then I actually had a couple of people say to me in a short period of time, like, hey, have you considered being a massage therapist? And I thought, well, I'll try it. Well, I ended up loving it, joining the program, and it was like the very first day in the program where an director came over to me and said, how are you doing that? And I thought at first, back to my trauma, I was doing it wrong. I'm like, what did I do wrong? And she's like, no, you're doing it great. Like, nobody does it like that on day one. How are you doing that? And I looked at what I was doing and I said, oh, I'm in warrior pose right now. Well, I'm a yoga teacher. And she said, that's it. That's what we need. And I had just naturally adapted, figuring out.
What do you mean? You were giving a massage?
Yeah.
In such in a way that you're brand new at this. How can you do it so well?
Exactly.
And it's because you were in warrior pose as you were doing it.
Yes. I was so in tune with paying attention to my body at this point from a year of yoga and realizing that if I move the way I'm used to moving, I just have more pain. But if I follow these principles that I've learned in yoga about aligning my body and moving it in this way, I'm not in as much pain. So I just naturally started doing that at the table. And the director was like, we need that from now on.
Cool.
So it was like my first day of class. I was hired to teach at the college program for the rest of my career. I've been there ever since.
How many years has that been?
It's been like 23 years now. Yeah, I graduated in 03, so 22 years in August.
Wow.
Yeah, and that first year I was right back in teaching, but at that point it was only 45 minutes once a week with body mechanics. Started making a big difference for the students and eventually became a certified reflexologist, and I started teaching that in the program and Reiki, and added more and more tools to my tool belt and continued helping people. And I'm about maybe 15 years into my career at this point when I'm the lead instructor at the local college. And one of my students mentions her hypermobility and how she has ESD. And I'm like, what is this you have? And she tells me about it. I'm like, that sounds like me.
Now, when was this? How many years ago was this?
It was probably 5 to 8 years ago.
Wow, recent.
Yeah, really recent, considering, again, this has been, I'm 51 now and just starting to figure all of this out. And so she tells me about this, and I start doing some online research, and I'm like, I think that's what I have. So I mentioned it to my doctor, and like I had read online, your doctor probably has never heard of it. And sure enough, she was like, I don't know what you're talking about. That leads me into another thing that we definitely need to talk about is the difference between Western medicine and how it's really dictated by pharmaceuticals. Back in, I forget when it was, but Henry Ford, he helped with that transformation and moving, at least I hope I have the right name, I'm pretty sure it was him, but moved the medical schools from being something that, now our doctors would consider it more witchcraft, but, doing that holistic care where it was hands-on manual therapies and herbology. And okay, sometimes there was bloodlettings when they were trying to figure out what to do. There was some weird
pains,
stuff. There's some growing pains. But eventually, at some point, they started realizing that through petroleum products, we can make pharmaceuticals, and pharmaceuticals were the way to make money. And so now medical schools were no longer interested in funding healthcare. It was really about funding pharmaceutical companies. And so even the FDA is paid by pharmaceutical companies to give us guidelines. I mean, not directly. It's not like they say, hey, we'll give you money and, we'll make these guidelines. No, it's not like that. I'm not saying there's some big conspiracy, but it's unfortunately just the way our system has developed. And so doctors go to medical schools that are owned by pharmaceutical companies. So they are trained in how to prescribe and treat through surgery and medications. They aren't trained in how to help people like with their tight muscles. All they know is a muscle relaxer. Whereas somebody like me or a chiropractor, somebody who's more holistic, looks at it like, hey, there's lots of other things you can do, from supplementation to, drinking water, maybe breathing better. There's a lot of things that we can do naturally with the body to alleviate issues that doctors don't even consider. In fact, in my community of people with ESD and even people without it, I've heard of people having a sternocleidomastoid, that's this neck muscle, removed because they couldn't get it to relax. Other people, due to thoracic outlet syndrome, which can cause nerve pain down your arm due to nerve entrapment, have had either the clavicle, a scalene muscle, or upper ribs removed. When I had thoracic outlet syndrome and I wasn't finding relief, what eventually resolved it for me was going back to breathing diaphragmatically. So I want to talk about that for a moment because, growing up, I could never even run a quarter mile. I had really bad exercise-induced asthma. So I would get maybe halfway around the quarter mile track and I'd be like, oh, why is my chin so itchy? Turns out it's just lack of oxygen to my tissues. Sometimes my back gets really itchy and then I'd be wheezing and I couldn't breathe. And, and the coach would be like, well, just walk, because I didn't have a medical excuse. And eventually I asked my doctor, they said, yeah, exercise-induced asthma, gave me an inhaler. Used that for most of my life, or most of my youth then, I shouldn't say not most of my life, but most of my youth, until I became a yoga teacher. And learning how to breathe better through yoga, I was amazed. I went from needing an inhaler for any time I did any sort of fast activity to now I started running, walking. I race bicycles and barely ever use an inhaler because I learned how to breathe better. I learned how to actually breathe diaphragmatically. And I want anybody who's watching this or listening that hears somebody say, lie on your back, put a pillow on your belly and push it up with your breath. That's diaphragmatic breathing. They are wrong. That is so wrong. All right. That is not the way to learn it. It's a way to learn belly breathing, but belly breathing is not diaphragmatic breathing.
Tell me about it. What is it?
I'm just going to skip the belly breathing initially and talk about the diaphragm. So the diaphragm is one of few circular muscles in our body. So the diaphragm is at the bottom of our rib cage, which goes all the way around. We have ribs from front to back. And so it is the underside of our rib cage. And it's what separates our digestive organs from our respiratory organs. And so the diaphragm is this muscle that when it contracts, it flattens. So this is its contracted state is down and flat. When we exhale, it relaxes and comes up like a dome. And so that's where the air is pushed out. And when we inhale and expand our lower rib cage, that diaphragm expands, the air comes in, and we get this big, full, deep breath that expands our lungs completely. Most people, due to stress, anxiety, moving through life, we end up being chest breathers.
Sure.
And that's where asthma comes in. When I was just breathing in my chest and I tried to do anything active, all this closes up, can't breathe anymore. When you get that diaphragm muscle moving, I breathe past this. And the lower lobes of the lung are filled and I'm totally fine. In fact, just this past Sunday, I had a really interesting thing happen. I was out mountain biking. And almost every time I start mountain biking, within the first 5 to 10 minutes, my upper back starts hurting. And so I have dislocating rib syndrome. Yes, my ribs pop in and out. Another thing that happens with hypermobility. And so I always attributed to that. I thought maybe just being on the bike, maybe I wasn't stabilizing well enough and ribs popped out because that's what it would feel like. Thankfully, I recently got a new inhaler because I kept riding and I always do like my breath check, like, okay, I can breathe fine. And I keep going. So I'm like, it must be my ribs. Well, this time it got worse than it has for as long as I can remember. I kept riding and I'm like, man, it's like coming all the way around the front. It's feeling almost like I can't move and I want to lay down and just go, I shouldn't be doing this. So I thought.
This is recently.
Just this past week, yeah. Wow. So, and again, I could still get a deep breath. So I stopped, tried the inhaler, back pain went away. I was like, okay, so even though I'm getting this deep breath, my lungs were still getting kind of irritated and a little pissy with me from not using the inhaler. So it's like all these things that I'm constantly learning. And again, doctors, even when I went to my doctor's office, it was funny. I had an appointment with my allergist on Tuesday and I mentioned it to the nurse.
Yes.
And she was just like, well, I just don't understand how your back could be related to your lungs or your asthma. And I'm like, okay, well, there's nerve innervations, it's location. I understand how it's connected. That wasn't my question.
Right, yeah. I already got that info. I'm just telling you. Yeah.
I just want to know if I'm damaging my lungs or if I've done damage over all the years that I didn't realize I needed an inhaler and I keep mountain biking. That was my only question. Right. But forget it, medical community. I'll figure it out.
Outstanding. Yeah.
It's so frustrating. I'm always told how I'm a medical anomaly. I'm allergic to exercise and many different odd things. But one important thing I want people to understand is, there was this big, when, again, pharmaceutical companies took over medical schools, there was this big push, you no longer understand yourself. You can't figure out anything. Grandma's home remedies, they won't work for you. You must see your doctor. You must get a prescription. That's the only way you'll survive.
Yeah.
It's kind of the input we're given in our society.
Right.
And it's so wrong.
Right.
And thankfully in our time now, people are getting back to nature. They are getting back to some holistic ways of healing, but it's still really underserved and underutilized, the amount of things that you can do. Again, so back to the thoracic outlet syndrome. I was saying, so sorry, I have ADHD and I jump around a little bit.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I learned how to breathe really well through yoga, but in 21, I was in a rollover car accident. The day before, I'd been mountain biking with my son. He was in the car with me. Thankfully, he was pretty much fine. Afterwards, he was just like, well, it hurts if you do this. So, of course, what did I say? Don't do this.
Yeah.
But that was the worst of his issues. It took me 2 years to recover. Now, I walked out with probably no broken bones. When they did all the x-rays, it's really hard to tell for sure about ribs, but I certainly could not diaphragmatically breathe. Pretty sure ribs were fractured down here. It hurts so bad. So for, I don't know how long it took for the ribs to heal, but when it hurts constantly to try to expand, you stop doing it. So I started chest breathing. It was the only way to survive for as long as it took, but by the time my ribs were healed, I was in the habit of chest breathing and didn't even recognize it. So I'm about 2 years into my recovery process. I start now having thoracic outlet syndrome. Now at this point, I've been through PT, like 4 different PTs. Most of them made me worse. Finally found one who helped and actually helped me get better. I've seen a pain specialist, and I've had nerve ablations for nerves that were just really irritated and causing constant migraines. And so now I've got this nerve pain that won't go away, and he's tried an epidural injection and trigger point injections twice for the nerve pain, and nothing is touching it. It's still going on. It's not changing. A friend sends me a video on a TikTok that a doctor did about diaphragmatic breathing, and it was poorly done. He's trying to get you to belly breathe, so you push your belly out and you'll diaphragmatically breathe. I'm like, no, he's wrong. But then it hit me. I'm like, have I been diaphragmatically breathing since the accident? The moment I went back to it, nerve pain went away.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, that's what I've been missing. I've been seeing all these doctors, and it was just that I wasn't breathing right. I can explain exactly why that happened. So thank you for this opportunity to do that, because people don't believe me when I say it. But so again, our body, the whole purpose of our body is to survive. Everything it does is about, how do I keep you alive? Because our body just wants to live as long as it can. So if we aren't breathing down here and we aren't getting enough oxygen and we're chest breathing, the only way our body can make us get more air in is to use neck muscles. So we have anterior scalenes, middle scalenes, posterior scalenes that will now start to do your breathing. So if you want to test it, like if you even brought your finger to it, you'll feel those muscles contract. Yeah. They're supposed to be accessory breathing muscles, but most people, unfortunately, are using them as their primary breathing muscles because they're not using their diaphragm. And this is, it's so funny to get people criticizing me like, how are you telling people to use their diaphragm? They have to be there alive. It's like, okay, probably they're using it a little bit, but there's a big difference between using it a little bit and recruiting these. Sure. Or, then I'm going to show you. So this is what a diaphragmatic breath looks like. So here's exhalation. That's how those ribs should push out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I like to teach people. Bring your hands around here and see if you can push these out. It's not about pushing the belly out. I mean, notice that hand doesn't really move. My thumb went up a little, but it's not about pushing the belly out. It's about expanding here.
I like that. And not pushing the belly out's good for me.
Yeah. And it makes sense. I mean, for instance, being a cyclist, if I'm over a bike, how am I going to push my belly out?
Sure.
I need to know how to breathe into my back. And guess what? Your diaphragm goes back there because your ribs are back here, so I can breathe into the area of my kidneys, and it works just the same. Diaphragmatic breath, and no, I'm not recruiting my neck. And so again, back to thoracic outlet syndrome. So oftentimes people have thoracic outlet syndrome. They've been chronically not breathing correctly. So these scalenes muscles are getting chronically tightened, lifting up those ribs. And now again, instead of getting massage, learning how to relax, learning how to breathe properly, they're seeing their doctor who's saying, well, you've seen me about this now, 5, 10, 15 times. Doesn't seem to be getting better. I guess we'll do surgery.
Wow.
And they do surgery.
Wow.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be that way. Through massage, I've helped people Through learning how to breathe properly, I've helped people. Through exercise, I've helped people. And with my new program, that's what I'm doing, is bringing it all together. All of those pieces, along with nutrition, supplementation, all of the things that I've learned to help us live better. Because again, even with all that I had learned up until 2 years ago, I was still in pain. Suddenly, 2 years ago, with dietary changes, more mindfulness and grounding, the addition of LDN and the use of pain specialists as needed, and just really better exercise. I mean, now when I'm in pain, instead of stretching, you'll usually find me doing a side plank or some core strengthening to resolve my pain, rather than the stretching or getting a massage that most people will resort to. Because let's talk about massage for EDS, in fact. So people with EDS will oftentimes seek massage therapy, because what happens in our bodies is, so a connective tissue disorder affects, go figure, all the connective tissue, but connective tissue is really widespread in our bodies. So it is what creates all of our muscles, our fascia, our joints, our tendons and ligaments, our blood vessels. It's the most abundant thing in our entire system. And so in anybody with a connective tissue disorder, ours is weaker and more easily broken, essentially. But in addition to that, our tendons and ligaments should be like a rubber band that's stretched out from end to end. On us, our ligaments are more like a rubber band that's been gone to slack. You know, those ends were brought too close together. If you can imagine, really ours are still probably further apart, but we just have like this sagging, swaying ligament as opposed to tension on it. And that tension that should be on it is what should be giving input to our nervous system, telling our body how we're standing, how we're sitting, how we're positioned, so that our nervous system goes, okay, you're sitting right now. My nervous system is going, what's happening with your head? I have my abs actually contracted right now so that my neck can be more relaxed. Because if I don't, then my body doesn't have enough input, and it will just start to tighten up things, thinking like, oh, your head must be falling off. Your arms must be falling off. So it will just naturally recruit muscle tension to hold things in place. So if I don't strengthen the muscles that are necessary to hold things in place, then all of those other muscles that I don't want constantly tight just will be.
Wow.
That's a lot. I don't know. I know. It's like, does that all make sense?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
We're so like, it's kind of a backwards thinking for people with hypermobility. And also, so when we do get massages, something I like to tell recipients and providers is, first of all, do not stretch the joints. When my arm can already move this far, if you're trying to stretch my shoulder by stretching, you're just going to dislocate my shoulder or damage my joint because it's already going too far. So don't stretch the joints at all. You can do direct tissue stretching. I love direct tissue stretching. Pin and stretch. Those are both massage terms that a massage therapist would know, but even a recipient could tell their therapist, like, hey, don't stretch my joints, but you can stretch my tissues. So that's something I want people to hear and know. Another thing is, people with hypermobility, because of the amount of muscle tension we tend to carry, therefore the pain we usually carry, anybody who usually carries pain in a massage wants more pressure. And the reason is they're used to carrying, like, say, this level 10 of pain. If they're not getting an 11 in the massage, it's not covering up their pain. So they usually want something that's like just going to meet that or exceed it a little bit, because now it's like, okay, now I got that different input, so it feels better. The problem with that, again, though, is for that hypermobile person, when they get all those muscles relaxed, they get off the table, then their nervous system says, holy, it's okay if I swear, right?
Yeah, sure.
I know I have a few times.
Of course.
Like, their nervous system's like, holy shit, now everything's really falling apart. Their head's falling off, their limbs are falling off, tighten everything up. And within a day or two, that person that had that massage that felt amazing initially, now they feel worse. And that's what I was dealing with. And I didn't understand it, because getting the deep tissue massage, I'm like, yeah, get in there, feels great, feels awesome. I'd have therapists like, are you sure this doesn't hurt? I'm like, oh no, feels great, do it. And then, yeah, a day or two later, I'd be in so much pain, like, I need another one. And that's what a lot of people, again, in my community are doing, is they're getting more massages than they probably should and not strengthening as often as they should. And again, I'm a massage therapist and yoga teacher, so I know about this stuff, and I sell it, I market it, but I also will tell people, don't do it too much. Strengthening is really where it's at. We have to make sure we're strong enough to hold ourselves together.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. What is your biggest message to folks listening today?
That there is more power and control within you than society or your doctor or the medical community gives you credit for. There is so much healing power within each and every one of us, and in what we can do for ourselves. And so that's where I come in. You know, I want to be that avenue for people to find other things and figure out why this hasn't been helping. You know, whatever it is they're doing, why isn't this helping? A lot of people are going to PT, and the PTs are making them worse because, again, unfortunately, so many PTs don't even acknowledge or recognize hypermobile spectrum disorders, and people go to PT. And have you ever done PT?
I never had to have
Oh, you
that.
never have?
Yeah,
Okay,
right,
so often PT, they're just like, all right, go do 15 squats on that ball. You know, or in that balance thing. And you go and you do them, but if they aren't checking with somebody with HSD, if they aren't checking their alignment, their form, their movement, they're making themselves worse. And that's where they're going wrong in PT, and they aren't even recognizing it.
Wow.
You know, I've been to PT, and they're surprised by the things I'm telling them, like, no, I shouldn't be doing that. That makes me hurt worse. They're like, oh, okay, well, I usually have people do it. Well, you shouldn't. Like for us too, PNF is the acronym for proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. It's a big term. So just to give an example, when I was in PT for TMJ, what he wanted me to do was provide resistance and try to shift my jaw into it. So you've ever done exercises like that, or maybe put an arm out and they give resistance and try to raise, raise, and then they're fatiguing the muscles so that you can then move it further is the goal. Somebody with HSD or ESD should not, EDS, I just said that wrong. EDS should not be doing those, again, especially in the parts of the body that are already kind of traumatized. Like for me, my neck and shoulders, for many of us, it's our neck and shoulders.
Yeah, sure.
If anybody tries doing that with my neck or shoulders, the muscles, they just kind of get all pissed off and are like, all right, you fired me up. No, I'm going to stay fired up. And they are just an angry mess after that.
Wow.
So yeah, do not piss those fibers off.
That's great advice.
It is.
That's great advice.
Do not.
So you have a course
I do.
that you're creating.
I do.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I've taken to get everything that I've learned and put that together. So I have a 3-day introductory where people can get a feel for what it is I have to offer in the longer version. And the 3-day version is right now a beta offer. It's brand new because although I've been helping people, this is my first time bringing it really to an online avenue. So I've been teaching it at the college for over 20 years. I couldn't tell you how many students have gone through the program. And those have helped with their body mechanics. And I assign all the students, I have to do a posture journal. I love reading those and reading how they go from, well, I went to the gym today. You know, I made sure before I went up to that machine, I tucked my chin, engaged my core and my shoulder blades, and I don't hurt now after being there. And I'm like, yes.
Great.
So it's like I'm helping all these normies. I'm doing air quotes there for anybody who's listening to the recorded version. But for people who are non-HSD, now there will be people in the class who have it, and it's helping them also. But a lot of people, you know, I don't have just a lot of people that are always coming to me with hypermobile spectrum disorders. A few.
Sure.
But so this is
Well,
my
it sounds like
first
it's a rare
time.
thing. How could you possibly?
Exactly. Yeah, it's a new thing, kind of uncommon. People are just starting to figure it out. So that's what I'm doing, is helping to bring more awareness, helping people to understand themselves and if they have it, and then also just how to move forward without as much pain. Hopefully no pain. And the program actually is useful for really anybody. Anybody who even does not have hypermobile spectrum disorder, that just has normal pain from maybe sitting at a desk job,
Sure.
they would also benefit from this. But that's just kind of my focus because I think it's a really underserved population that needs to be served and understand better how to help themselves.
Ultimately, what you're trying to do is help people alleviate their pain without having to go get a bunch of pills, without having surgery, breathing better, moving better, stretching or massage, strengthening, and massage when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's excellent.
Yeah, great
You got to
summary.
feel, I'm really excited about your course. You know, I can't wait to see it. You know, I've dealt with pain throughout my life too, right? We get tight, we just kind of ignore it and let it continue. And then before I know it, we're walking all crooked,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I get that. I'm looking forward to it. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So great seeing you. I'm very excited for your next big move. I think you're doing the right thing from being an educator. I mean, you're an expert. You've been educated for over 20 years.
Yeah.
So this next big move is is perfect timing.
Yeah, it's taking it more global because, there's only so many people right here that can walk through my door one at a time.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm tired of it just being one at a time. I want to get more people, more information so that more people can go and enjoy their lives because at 51, I'm still mountain biking. I do flying trapeze, stand-up paddleboard. I ride a Harley as often as I can. I mean, I do all the things and I love it. I think everybody should be living their best life and I want to help people do that.
I agree. Great seeing you. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah.